Okay, now that we've gone over all of the resources and looked at things in detail, looked at all the artifacts and how they fit together, let's have a little fun. Let's add a few fields to this example entity and see some of the power of how certain resources are derived from other resources. So for example, the service definitions are defined based on the entity definitions. Form definitions are based on the service definitions. Service implementations use generic things like setting all non-primary key fields, setting all primary key fields, and such, so that when changing the entity definitions, changes are often not required there. Let's look at some examples of adding a field to the example entity. So we'll go look at the entity model.xml file, and let's add a field of, we'll just do a plain text thing based on this other field. We'll give it the type of name. Actually, let's do long varchar. These types, by the way, are from a data dictionary, or a data type dictionary, I should say. There's a file that describes the SQL type and Java type for each of these types that we define here and for each database. So looking at the one for Derby, which is the default, let's see, field types, Derby, or field type Derby. There we go. Okay, so these are all of the different field types we'll typically have available. And you can look this up later to see the details. So we'll use this long varchar one, which will be typically around a 250 character string. And let's call our new field a product comment. So this we'll want it to be just a plain text entry. Let's do a couple other things like a product ID. And what I'm thinking here is we'll just show some examples of creating a plain text entry box, a drop down. Let's have this one be the product type ID. Okay, I could create foreign keys to these by defining relationships that would point over to the product table and the product type table. So one thing to note is that when you change an entity definition or a service definition, you do have to restart Open for Business. So I'll go ahead and let that run in the background while we're looking at this, get it restarted. So the next time I refresh this form, as soon as the server is started up again, we'll see those new fields show up down here at the bottom. They'll all be text entry boxes. The length of the box and such will be automatically configured depending on the entity field definition and the service attribute associated with it. It'll pull information from there and try and figure out the best default way to present the field. And of course you can override that in the form definition to get whatever you want. Okay, now we're restarted. We click on this again, and now we have our product comment, product ID, and product type ID. Notice these are just text entry boxes. Let's make this so it's a lookup window, and make this so it's a drop down. So let's go look at the form definition. We don't really need to change anything in the service definition or service implementation. Let's just go look at the edit example form. We'll use something very similar to this edit example type ID. So let's just go ahead and copy that. Make things easy on us. In this case, it's going to be product type ID is the name of the field that we want to override the default definition of. We'll just leave it with the default title. Select box is the style we use for these drop downs. It's kind of the default one in OFBiz. We'll change this. We'll show what an allow empty equals true looks like. Okay, in this case, the entity is going to be product type. We can go ahead and just leave the description on there. So now when we go look at this, let's go reload it. Now we have a drop down for all of the product types. And these are the types that come from the product component that are in the seed data for the product type entity. So if I go ahead and select one of these and update it, now that's my current type. And I can set it back to empty if I want, so that there's no value. So let's just set it to a finished good real quick. Now the product ID, let's go ahead and create a lookup for that. So we'll just define this manually. Field, product ID is the name of the field. We want it to be a lookup. Now the target form name will be lookup product. This is actually a little bit confusing. That might be better to say this is the form target name. Now what it's going to do is it's going to use this name as the request in the controller.xml file for the pop-up window so it can look up the product. This lookup product is defined over in the product component. Now with the component architecture and the way that the screen widget and such are written, the only thing that we need to copy over from the product component, this would be in the catalog manager. Let's find lookup product. Here we are. Here's the request map for it. So the only things that we need are the request map. We'll copy that over into our file with the other request maps. And we need the view map. So we copy those over to the example applications controller XML file. Now we have a lookup product request and a lookup product view, and it's pointing over to the product component. Just reuse the stuff that's sitting over there. Just reuse it in place. So now when we go over here, click on example, we've got this little guy to the side which represents the pop-up window. So when we click on it, up comes the product lookup. And if we look up all the products that are, say, of type finished good, here we go. We can select one of these, select it, and pop the ID in there. Let's throw in a comment and update it. And now this is the value we have. These are the values we have. If we go off the page and go back to it, there they are, coming from the database. So it's that easy to add fields, look up screens, drop-downs, just text entry boxes, have them automatically added in with the form when we just add it to the entity definition, because the service definition is based on the entity definition, and the form definition is based on the service definition, and so they'll just pop up here automatically. And then if we want to change them so that they do something else, it's just that easy.